Well, we're approaching the end of our summer series, Knowing Thy Neighbor. And we've been spending a lot of time just kind of asking ourselves some tough questions, pushing ourselves to get outside of the normal routine of life and ask God to lead us in the places we already are, in our neighborhoods, within our kids' sporting teams or activities, at our jobs, at our grocery stores, wherever we are. And hopefully, some of you have gotten an opportunity to push yourself a little bit. Maybe get to know at least one neighbor a little bit better, or one coworker a little better, one friend a little bit better. Last week, Brandon broached this idea that we can be more intentional with our conversations, our communication with others, and he handed us a framework that he got from a book and from a disciple-making movement, this idea of casual, meaningful, spiritual, and discovery conversations. And this idea that we can move our conversations along over time as we have relationship being built. This tool can be very helpful for us in framing up our way of life, and it's similar in many ways to our rhythm of life here at Singing Oaks. If you're new to Singing Oaks, you may not know this about us, but we move annually through a rhythm of life, and the current section that we're in, or season that we are in, is called our Go season. And in our Go season, we emphasize going and sharing our story. What has God done with each and every one of us? What is God doing with our church? We go to our missionaries in foreign countries. Last week we had kids that went up to Tulsa and worked with inner city kids. We have people that go into their neighborhoods to share the stories about what God has been doing in our own lives. Do you see what God's been doing in yours? Can you share it? Pretty soon we'll move into our Connect season. And our Connect season, we've decided, is best placed in the fall when we have a lot of new people coming here. We see a lot of growth in the fall here. We are a college town, and new college students move here, professors and industry, and there's a lot of movement that typically happens in the fall. And we'll move into our Connect series, and I'm excited about it this year because it's calling us to figure out how to connect spiritually, not just through fun and fellowship and the other ways that we're really good at connecting, but to push that connection a little bit deeper. And then in the winter months, we focus on growing. How do we grow in our understanding of God and what God's called us to do? And in the spring months, on serving. How do we use God's giftedness that He's placed within us to bless the community that we're in, the church that we're in, the body of Christ? We move through these rhythms, and as we take that concept and that idea and we apply it to our communication and conversations, we're hoping that we can see more fruit in what God has called us to do. Casual conversations are things that we have every day. They're general topics, and they help us establish rapport with different people. Some of those conversations you might think of as small talk. Good morning. How's your day going? What's been happening? How's life? What's been going on with your kid? How's work? Things that are just designed to be nice, right? We have some small interest. We're trying to make a nice connection, and we want to show that we are kind people, and vice versa. Meaningful conversations push us a little bit deeper. These are ones that we are asking much more deeper questions about people, really wanting to know a little bit more about them. Now, I'm a marriage therapist, and so my favorite one to ask in this category is, how's it going? What's been happening? How's your marriage? Do any of y'all want me to ask you that? How's your marriage? I might get a little bit more meaningful, and I might rapidly move into spiritual and discovery with some people. But a lot of times, that's a pretty easy win for me. Well, that's a weird question. Why do you ask that? Well, I'm a marriage therapist. Why wouldn't I ask that? I'm interested in marriages. I want to know how they're actually functioning and working. Or maybe, did you catch the debate a few weeks ago? What did you think about that political debate? Did you watch the Olympic Open ceremonies, or did you, like me, have to shut it off midway through? Meaningful conversations, right? I've got your attention now, I can tell. Spiritual conversations dive into core values and beliefs, philosophies, ways of viewing the world. getting at the core of what people think and feel at a high level. Discussions that take us into our values, into the things that honestly really matter. And then finally, the last quadrant there, this discovery quadrant, we seek to explore things that we really haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. Deeper faith and understanding, complex questions that may leave us wanting more, like what do we do with evil in this world? It's a big problem. How do we reconcile the unreconcilable in our own minds sometimes? What happens when we are in crisis? These are the opportunities that God puts in front of our feet all the time. We just may not always notice them or see them. And our call in this series is to try to get us a little bit more aware. This past week, I was thinking about Brandon's sermon. I've gone back and listened to it a couple of times to make sure I fully understood what he was trying to communicate. And there's so many little tidbits in there that they can just go missed, that you just hear each time. And as is my kind of current rhythm of life, I ride my bike on Tuesday mornings, and I ride my bike on Thursday mornings, and I typically ride on Saturday mornings. Well, this week was a little bit disrupted for me. Tuesday morning, I went out on my bike ride, and I had this sermon in my background, and I've got these guys that I ride with, and I kept thinking, how can I move the conversation with these guys? We've been riding together for months. I spend 2 hours or 4 hours with them a week on bikes next to each other in close proximity, and most of our conversations are just casual conversations. Talking about barbecue, talking about bicycles, talking about the weather. Maybe it broaches something here or there every once in a while, something important like some construction project, I don't know. Never really goes all that deep. And as I'm sitting there quiet, which is not usual for me, I just kept thinking, you know what, I'm going to try a different tactic this morning. I'm just not going to talk. And I'm going to see what happens. An hour and 15 minutes into the ride, guy is beside me, and we're kind of in different positions as we ride unintentionally. It's just kind of how it goes. I can't make this stuff up, guys. It's like the sermon just like hands it to me, right? He goes, so what you preaching on Sunday? You know? Well, honestly, Mike, I don't know. It's Tuesday. That's a long time from now. But what I've been thinking about is this conversation right here. And he's like, what? And I said, trying to figure out how to have conversations with people that are like real. But looking at the life of Christ. And, and honestly, if you were going to show up at my church and listen to my sermon, what would you want to hear? Here comes the can. And he began to just talk. And I began to panic. Because I know he's a 3-lap kind of guy, and I'm a 4-lap kind of guy, and we're getting to the end of the 3rd lap. And he turned into a 4-lap kind of guy. And we kept chatting, or I kept listening, and he kept talking. And as we went along, he kind of just said, it needs to be biblical. I need to hear something about Jesus and what he thinks. So, okay. And he goes, it needs to be, you can't have all these points. It's too many points. There's too much stuff going on. It's just got to, it needs to have one simple thing at the end of it. And I said, oh, okay, all right. And he goes, and honestly, just need to figure out how to react to things in the world better. And I thought, oh man, this is great. I don't have anywhere to write this down. I don't know how I'm going to remember this in an hour when I get home, and all I'm trying to do is just recover. But I did. Turns out that the casual, meaningful spiritual discovery conversation wasn't from me to him, but from him to me. Did you notice that? I did. Sometimes the best conversation for us to have is to be in discovery, and not to think that we have it to show someone else to discover. You know, the world's full of problems. I don't know if y'all noticed that. But I think as Christians, we can struggle sometimes to react well to those problems. I'll even give you one from yesterday. I mean, you've been there, right? So yesterday, or Friday night, I got a message from one of you guys, and it was, hey, we had something come up in our family. We can't go to this event on Saturday morning. Would you like to have our tickets to go? And Jill looks over at me, and she says, well, aren't you going on a bike ride? I said, well, honestly, I haven't told you this yet, but my knee's been hurting a little bit. And I've been thinking I probably shouldn't ride tomorrow because I know if you get a knee injury on a bike and you keep riding, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So I thought I should take off. But in the inside, I was thinking maybe I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be able to do this because there was a conversation I had on Tuesday with this guy, and I want to go back to that conversation. So I really feel like I should go. But this invitation is kind of my sign to say don't ride tomorrow. And so I'm good to go. Let's go do family time tomorrow morning. And so we went. We were given free tickets to go to the circus. And it was great. It wasn't what I was expecting, but it was a blast. But immediately when I walked into American Airlines Center after getting off the train with my kids, I recognized there was going to be a problem. Because right when we walked in, right to the right of us, was a giant kiosk of all sorts of stupid toys. Circus toys. You know, if you've ever been to the circus, the kind when all the lights go off, the toys light up, and they make noise, and there's random swords. I mean, they had the dragon swords. There weren't even dragons in the show. They had snow cones. Guys, I got to tell y'all something. They got some snow cones at the circus that are worth $30. I really thought I wanted to taste one of those. I did. But something inside of me told me, no, it ain't worth $30, Beau. It can't be. It's just ice and sugar and water. It surely cannot be that expensive. We did not buy the snow cone, by the way. But the problem was, well, let's look at the problem. Let's ask the questions, right? I have a 6-year-old with me. Is the problem my 6-year-old who just walks around going, I want, I want, I want? I mean, I looked at her one point and I said, I'm going to just keep count of how many times you say I want between here and our seats. I got to 10. Is her problem I want? No, she's a 6-year-old. What's she going to say? She's communicating. She says, I want this, I want this, I want this. And I think, I don't own a bank, okay? I don't have an extra $100K sitting around because that's how expensive that stuff is, right? It's like a giant game of whack-a-mole of no, 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 no. I mean, it just kept thinking, how can I close these eyes and make it to the seat? I just want to get to my seats. Is the problem I don't have enough money to just give her what she wants? Is the problem that the circus is there knowing that I'm a hostage now? And they have a conspiracy to try to get into my pocket and pull out more money. That's probably it. But am I reacting correctly by just saying no to my daughter? Should I not sit down and explain to her the vast understanding that I have of microeconomics and dive into the fact that I could easily spend her college tuition this morning? Should I go into all of the details why that little trinket or that $30 snow cone cup will be left under the seat and forgotten, either in my car, in the train, or even at the circus? That momentary gratification of holding that shiny little object. Should I dive into all of that, or should I look at her and say, sweetheart, when I say no, I mean no, and don't ask again? I feel like a parent. But I remember sitting there thinking, I know there's got to be a better way to do this. I don't have a mentor in the moment to ask, now, how should I really respond? Is it okay just be no? Should I spank the bottom at some point? Should I threaten her to not get anything at all? And we're going to go home? How? right? But I think this is a problem we face, and this is a micro level problem, right? I think this is a problem we still face at a macro level. In fact, I find this same problem in the Bible. I find it with Jesus. I want to share a little story with you out of John chapter 8, verse 1. It says this, while Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, early in the morning he came again to the temple. And all the people came to him, and he sat down and he began to teach them. This is simple. He's going to the temple. He has a plan. His plan is to teach people who come to the temple. Why is he doing that? Because he knows people who go to the temple might want to learn something. And he knows if he plops himself down because of who he is, people might start coming up and asking questions. He might be able to give them some helpful information with life. He just wants to go sit and bless people. Verse 3, the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and making her stand before everyone, they said to Jesus, Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now what do you say? I honestly, now Jesus may have known this was coming. I mean, he is Lord, right? But if it's me, and I'm sitting in this moment, and I'm in church right now, and I'm trying to teach because people have come here to learn. And somebody walks in here and walks up on this stage and says, Beau, I watched the debate last night. Who are you voting for right now? Beau, I started to watch the opening ceremonies, and they mocked Christianity. What are you going to do about it right now? Like, come on. That's really what you're thinking. Some of you. Jesus doesn't get lost in who he is. He's right there to answer a question. It's really a very simple question. I mean, it's a very simple question. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now, what do you say? Are you going to, the question is, are you going to go against the law of Moses? Are you going to go with the law of Moses? Pretty simple. Are you going to be what God has said you have to be, or are you not going to be what God has said you have to be? Is it a casual conversation? No. Is it a discovery conversation? Really? They might be trying to discover something, but it's really not a discover. Is it meaningful? Yeah. It's definitely meaningful to the lady who's about to be executed. And it's got to be meaningful to everybody who's sitting there. And Jesus is going to do something to move it to spiritual. Let's watch. They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring up against him. And Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. Now, we all want to know what he wrote. We do. There ain't a person I've ever read this passage to that, well, what did he write? I don't know. I don't know why he's writing in the ground to begin with. Did he write in Hebrew? Did he write in Greek? Did he just start drawing? Is he buying himself time? Is he deflecting? We don't know. But he wrote something. It says in verse 7, when they kept on questioning him, this is the sky in the circus moment. Can I have, like, right? At some point with her, I just got down in her face and I said, there are no more I wants. Zero. The next I want is Dad's getting what Dad wants, which is you to be silent. Right? That's the next I want that's coming. So, and there can be worse punishments, like I can ground you from your iPad when you get home. Whoop, whoop, she got quiet real quick. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and he said to them, this is a tough one, guys. Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. I don't know what that noise is, but it's annoying. I don't care which presidential candidate you're voting for. I have my opinions about which one I think the country deserves. I don't care what you think about the Olympic opening ceremonies. unless you have no sin, you have no right throwing stones. Doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't reflect on how we might respond when given the opportunity. When somebody calls us into question, when we read on social media somebody posting and saying, why aren't the Christians rising up against this? Why aren't they speaking out and attacking back on X, Y, or Z, whatever it is? Why do they constantly let people persecute them and not attack back? Why is it that every other major religion in the world doesn't get attacked in the West, but Christianity does? Why? I want. And sometimes I think we've got to be like Christ and just sit down and write in the sand for a moment. Because the meaningful conversation those people are wanting to have cannot be had without an understanding of the spiritual realm we live in. Jesus understands that. He understands what he's about to call people to do. He understands that he's going to have them reflect on themselves because we are like everyone else in this world. We want justice served to the one who hurt us and mercy to come to us when we hurt others. Jesus doesn't answer the question in the moment. He doesn't say that Moses was right. He doesn't say that Moses was wrong. He fully grasped the process, the communication, the conversation that he was in the moment, and chooses to take it a little deeper rather than let it stay in the same box. Verse 8, and once again he bent down and he wrote on the ground. When they heard what he said, they went away one by one. Now listen to this because this is important. Beginning with the elders. The old folks knew when to walk away. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. And this is where most of our culture stops at this point, right? I think in a lot of biblical conversations that we see happening online and in the public discord, there's a lot of conversations that seem to stop. That Jesus just loved her. He didn't do anything. Jesus condemned the religious people for their bad questions, sent them on their way. But what does he say right here? Woman, where are your accusers? Where are they? Has no one condemned you? And she said, no one, sir. And Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on, do not sin again. Jesus judges her action as sin. He doesn't deny that it's sin. He doesn't look at her and say it's not sin. He doesn't look at the crowd and say it's not sin. He doesn't disagree with Moses' assessment in the law that it's sin. He doesn't disagree with the Ten Commandments that it's sin. He doesn't disagree with it. What he disagrees with is the attitude of the people who want to use sin as a way to eradicate things they don't like. Instead of learning to live with our enemies and learning to do good to those who persecute us. And learning to love people no matter what sin they've committed, but to tell them when asked. Yeah, it's sin. I've got sin too. I'm not perfect. The problem today that we see playing out in our culture in this moment, and in a lot of moments, is that we try to use the Bible, or if we're non-religious people, the Constitution, or whatever law we're living in at the moment, as proof text to condemn the actions we don't want and to confirm the actions we do. We've all become lawyers. We become lawyers when we talk politics. We become lawyers when we talk about things like the Olympic ceremonies. We become lawyers when we interact with our kids and lawyers with everybody else. We miss the mark about grace sometimes. We get caught up in the wrong set of conversations, and we must stop and ask those hard questions of ourselves. We must recognize the process that we are in, like Jesus, stopping, writing on the ground, maybe scribbling something for just a second to give him a breath to kind of go, God, why did you put me here with these people? In this moment, it's hard. There's a spiritual process playing out in our physical reality. So what do we do with that, right? Well, have you ever read the book of Daniel? I think if somebody looks at you and says, hey, what'd you think about the opening ceremonies of the Olympics? Respond with this. Have you ever read the book of Daniel? Somebody says, hey, what do you think about what's going on in our politics right now between our presidential candidates and our two warring parties that are out there? Just go, have you ever read the book of Daniel? I think it's a pretty good response. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, and that's okay, because maybe you haven't read the book of Daniel in a while, but I just spent a week with kids at Camp Eagle studying the book of Daniel, and it reminded me of a sermon series that we did in 2023, yes, just a year ago, about being exiles in a foreign land. It reminded me of this passage in 1 Peter chapter 2. Dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles, to keep away from fleshly desires, do battle against the soul, and to maintain good conduct among non-Christians, so that though they may see you as a wrongdoer, they may see your good deeds and glorify God the day that he appears to them. Daniel is a book about how to live as exiles. Daniel is a space that we have Christians can go to and go, how do we do this? How do we live with King Nebuchadnezzar, Darius and Cyrus? How do we do this when they may actually throw us in a pit of lions? They may actually put us in a fiery furnace. They may actually tempt us to try to be more like them. They may call us and frustrate us by asking us to do things that are against our beliefs. How do we respond? Have you ever read the book of Daniel? We're exiles. We are called to live here, and we're called to pray for our leaders. We're called to do good deeds. We're called to try to figure out through the Holy Spirit and through community how to respond to things in a way that honors Jesus. John 17:13. But now I am coming to you, and I am saying these things in the world so that they may experience my joy, and my joy may be complete in them. I have given them your word, Father, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I am not asking you to take them out of the world, Father, but that you keep them safe from the evil one. They, my followers, this is Jesus talking, do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Set them apart in truth. Your word is truth. Just as you sent me into this world, so I send them into the world. I set myself apart for their behalf, so they too may also be set apart truly. Sometimes the best response is no response. Sometimes the best response is for us to pause for a minute and say, I need to think about that. It's not as clear as you might have been told it was. Christians' perspectives may not be what you think they are. We have to do difficult things. And what I'm trying to reconcile in the moment is, how do I love God and how do I love you? Because I want to do both and do that both well. If you were me, how would you do it? Casual, meaningful, spiritual discovery. Ask yourself when you have a conversation which one you are in. Use the Spirit with you to discern whether or not you should stay in that one in the moment, or you should try to shift it. And when given the opportunity, always try to shift to understanding what God may be trying to do with you in that moment. What is he trying to get you to discover in that place? My favorite response, and this is one you can take with you. I don't know that I have the right answer for that, but I believe in one that does. Would you like to know more about him? I think the worst thing that we can do often as Christians is answer questions. If we're going to be more like Christ, we've got to be really, really good at responding with better questions. Amen? Kind of heavy today, huh? Hopefully you got a lot of thinking going on in your brain. God's handing you stuff, right? He's placing conversations in front of you. You may be reflecting on some that you've had this past week. You may be thinking and anticipating some that are coming. If you are thinking about some conversations that are coming at you this week, pray to God about them and ask Him, God, how do I help that conversation be about you and not me? About your glory, not Satan's glory. About the good that's trying to happen in the world rather than the evil that wants the attention in the world. How do we do that? How do we grow in that? Amen? Let's stand and praise God.